In a statement unlike ones it has made in the past, India on Monday chastised the Sri Lankan government for a lack of measurable progress in finding a political solution to the ethnic issue involving Sri Lankan Tamils. These comments were made at a debate in the United Nations Human Rights Council during the discussion on the report released earlier by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. India wasn't the only one to express his comments, though perhaps his comments stood out more because of his track record. Initiating the dialogue at the UNHRC session, UN Acting High Commissioner for Human Rights, Nada al-Nashif, stated that Sri Lanka should improve human rights and strengthen institutions to tackle the humanitarian challenges that have sprung from its worst financial crisis in 7 decades. Sri Lanka, in its response to Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, told the same meeting that the government was committed to working with the OHCHR on improving human rights but would object to any international judicial intervention it sees as anti-constitutional. Indra Mani Pandey, the Indian permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, criticized Colombo for tardiness in reaching a political solution. He said, and I quote, "The Indian delegation notes with concern the lack of measurable progress by the government of Sri Lanka on their commitments of a political solution to the ethnic issue through full implementation of the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, delegation of powers to provincial councils and holding of provincial council elections at the earliest." He repeated that India supports a political settlement within the framework of a united Sri Lanka, ensuring justice, peace, equality and dignity for the Tamils of Sri Lanka. This has been India's most severe criticism of the Sri Lankan government to date in recent years. So why now? India's comments comes after Colombo allowed a Chinese research vessel to dock at Hambantota port last month, despite New Delhi and United States conveying its security concerns over its intentions. India had already signalled its unhappiness over Colombo's handling of the Chinese ship when the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson called on Indian tourists to exercise caution and examine all factors before undertaking non-essential travel to Sri Lanka last month. India had been the largest source of tourists to Sri Lanka in the first 8 months of 2022. The advisory led to a drop in the number of Indian tourists travelling to Sri Lanka in the last week of August. This year, India has extended around $4 billion in aid to Sri Lanka as soft loans and currency swaps to tide over the economic crisis. However, the Sri Lankan government has other worries to take care of. It has to enter into delicate talks with China to restructure its debt, an essential requirement before the International Monetary Fund disperses a $2.9 million loan to Colombo. Later in the UNHRC session this month in Geneva, Western countries will table a draft resolution that may seek an external investigative mechanism to probe human rights abuses in Sri Lanka. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, in his address to the UNHRC, said Sri Lanka would reject any follow-up action to Resolution 46/1 passed in March 2021. India has so far voted twice in favour of UNHRC resolutions that have been critical of Sri Lanka in 2012 and 2013. It has also voted in favour of a resolution sponsored by Sri Lanka at the special session of UNHRC in 2009, held a week after the end of the quarter-century-long civil war. After Maithripala Sirisena defeated Mahinda Rajapaksa in 2015 presidential elections, the new government had supported the West-sponsored resolution 25/1 in UNHRC, which was adopted without a vote. In 2017 and 2019, there was also no voting called for adopting resolution, which effectively extended the implementation of Resolution 25/1. However, with the Rajapaksa family back in power, the Western countries were more outspoken in their criticism about lack of progress on accountability. Accordingly, the resolution that they tabled in March 2021 had stronger provisions like establishing a central international database to enable future prosecutions of war crimes. It was adopted with 22 votes in favour and 11 against, including China. There were 14 abstentions, including that of India. The draft resolution that will be tabled in this session will be circulated in Geneva today. If there is a voting on the resolution, as is expected with Sri Lanka not supporting the draft, then India is again likely to abstain. Unlike what people assume, abstention is not a cop-out, but a legitimate diplomatic position which often gives space for countries to negotiate. Voting in favour of a country-specific UN resolution is not a serious proposition for India due to its traditional position on such moves. It would also be akin to slamming the door on Sri Lanka and pushing it towards China. At the same time, India also cannot entirely toe Sri Lanka's line and vote against the resolution due to its own domestic calculation and also not letting Colombo get too complacent. It would also go against India's consistent position that legitimate aspirations of Sri Lankan Tamils are yet to be met. Of course, time will tell whether India's balancing act on Sri Lanka will help in achieving its long-term security interest and limit China's influence in the Indian Ocean.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.